Hi, my name is Zakayo Kjellström. I am a PhD student in Media Studies at the Department of Culture and Media Studies at Umeå University. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to this conference and allowing me to speak, albeit a bit strangely, over a video recording as such. I'm going to present a part of my PhD dissertation, which is a study focused on the piracy of literature. This is a sort of work in progress that I've titled A Summer of Sci-hub, which details the creation of a novel data set studying use patterns on a shadow library website. Since 2011, Sci-hub, a website founded by the Kazakh scholar Alexandra Elbakayan, which is also pictured here, has been distributing scholarly articles locked behind paywalls freely to everybody. According to her, she created the website by unifying two practices she adopted during her studies. First, she emulated the process she used to connect to the blog site LiveJournal, which at the time was blocked in her home country. This involved the use of anonymization tools. Secondly, she had, during her studies, collected a respectable library of ebooks from pirate websites, but realized there was no alternative for journal articles, which inspired her to create something similar for that specific type of document. Now, by melding these two ideas, she designed a function in a website to retrieve articles behind paywalls of journals, and thusly Sci-hub was born. The Sci-hub project is by design Alexandra's project. She runs the main mirrors and all the servers herself. Prior research into Sci-hub has tried to link the site to other so-called shadow libraries in a very explicit sense, which has been refuted by Elbakayan. Sci-hub has, however, cooperated with other shadow library sites, for example LibGen, which receives a copy of every article uploaded to the Sci-hub database, whilst also adding it to their own open repository, which is freely available for anyone to download. During Sci-hub's initial years, it also redirected users to LibGen as the site grew large at a very unexpected pace. Furthermore, it also copied some of LibGen's collection to serve files to Sci-hub users. What is of particular interest for this study is her admission that some of the website mirrors are not run by herself. So you can see here in the quote to the left. Interestingly, others have also used the database available and provided by the cooperation between Sci-hub and LibGen to sort of create copies of the original Sci-hub site. So this is the library Genesis or LibGen site, and under the download tab you can find the full article database, which is quite large, somewhere around 90 million articles. When performing data collection for another article in my research project, I noticed how the Sci-hub mirrors actually differed in appearance and connections. This is before I knew that there were other people that ran sort of copies of Sci-hub. And particularly, I saw there were two domains which stood out in comparison to the others. Upon closer inspection, I found that these two domains were part of three sort of official project mirrors. I'm going to show how these official project mirrors look so you can see the difference now. Here is a sort of classic Sci-hub, quite scaled down, very simple. You enter a URL or DOI and you retrieve an article, whilst the more differing domains looks like this. So yeah, one was this minimalistic site and had this simple retrieval bar with an about and a donation section, whilst the other two official project mirror sites included much more information, such as an extensive biography under the tab Elbakayan and selected writings by her also under that tab, download statistics by country, which you can find under stats, and most importantly, a data stream of latest reads, which you can see here to the right of this screenshot. And I'm going to return more to the importance of this data stream a little bit later. Previous quantitative research on Sci-hub has been mostly derived from two significant data sets released 2016 and 2017. The first data set was created as a collaboration between the journalists John Bohannon and Alexandra Elbakayan. For this occasion, Elbakayan opened up the server logs that detailed every download from Sci-hub over a 6-month period, starting the 1st of September 2015. In this dataset, everything from the most downloaded paper to the closest city where the paper was downloaded was revealed. Now, the ensuing articles spawned a lot of attention on the site, both from news outlets and researchers, which subsequently initiated a series of studies based on the data set. Now, there are a few that focuses on Latin America, such as Mastro Matteo, and a few that go into the contents of the data set, such as Till and Hoy, etc. During 2017, Alexandra Elbakayan released another dataset of similar character to the one she put together with John Bohannon. This also detailed the use of Sci-hub, but during the entirety of the year 2017. She released it in 2018. As you can see here to the right, Bastian Grosrak was the first researcher to publish a paper detailing the use patterns found in the datasets. But same as with the initial release from John Bohannon and Elbakayan, many other followed, such as Pivovar, Nazarovets, Himmelstein. Now, what is unique about these two datasets is sort of the behind-the-scenes view it gives of the controversial yet lauded website. Returning to the previously mentioned data stream, latest reads, and when I discovered it, I realized sort of the potential it could have. And seeing as the actual stream of updates was simple HTML, it could be harvested and used to compile an overview of what was happening on Sci-hub at any given moment. Over time, this would allow for the creation of a novel dataset, which I will show, which, albeit not as extensive as the ones created previously, but unique in its non-reliance on Sci-hub's creator for understanding user patterns. Furthermore, it gives an insight into the contents of Sci-hub based solely on engagement with the site rather than reliance on its creator. Now, the aim of this talk is to discuss the process which produced the dataset, as well as show different ways on how to study it and sort of preliminary results. Seeing as only two of the Sci-hub mirrors actively publishes the latest RID section, Sci-hub.se and Sci-hub.ru, the focus was directed towards them. Since both of the sites are protected by Cloudflare for DDoS mitigation and content delivery services, some problems arose. To evade the protection of the website, my colleague and I chose to set an interval for every couple of minutes, meaning that the actual dataset does not include every single one of the downloaded articles for the duration of the data collection period. Instead, the end product is a series of snapshots taken every few minutes, which together form a representation of user patterns. Additionally, since Cloudflare continuously expunged the bot from the websites, we alternated in between the domains to further avoid detection and used two different methods to scrape the domains. One which automatically refreshed the web page and was actively viewed by my colleague, and the other was a Linux script which automatically took screenshots from the site. The data from the two methods were joined, and any occurrences of duplicates were removed, which was roughly 2,000. Now, due to the interaction between the web scraping bot and the Cloudflare protection, there were moments in the data collection process where gaps occurred. Now, these are reflective of the process of gathering data with the conventional method in a sort of a non-conventional setting, particularly because harvesting of this kind is often performed using APIs rather than forcing our way into the contents of a web page with somewhat incessant repetition. Now, the contents from the dataset retrieved from Sci-hub includes information about titles, DOI, and time of download. This gives a somewhat clear picture of how users interact with the website, but to understand what sort of users frequented the page, it was required to further enrich the contents. Specifically, this would allow us for analysis of the metadata of each article. Now, since the collection of DOIs from Sci-hub over the summer was quite significant, more than 1 million, it would be needlessly time-consuming to manually query each one of them. Instead, the Crossref API was used to gain the full metadata of each download collected. Now, once this was done, the dataset could be further investigated and understood in terms of contents and user interests. In the image here, you can see sort of the beginning of the experiment, and this was before we devised this two methods of web scraping. In the I guess first half of June, we finally understood that you can use two methods, and it peaked at about 25,000 each day. And then when my colleague left for vacation, the active supervision sort of ended, and it obviously dropped by a little more than a half for the rest of the summer. From the dataset, a few things can preliminarily be discerned. In this graph, we find the years of the articles published. This span is surprisingly long, beginning early in the mid to late 1700s, with a significant spike in the second half of the 20th century. As could be expected, most Sci-hub users are interested in articles published post-2010. The older articles are often related to medicine, physics, philosophy, and engineering. Presumably, they are accessed by historically interested users rather than practitioners from a respective field. Overall, the articles published before 1950 tend towards the social sciences and humanities. This is the span 1920 to 1950. However, they only amount to a couple of dozen, so nothing definitive can be said about them, except for the fact that they are all under the auspices of one of the top academic journal publishers and subsequently paywalled, regardless of the status of their respective authors, which points towards a sort of ignored function of Sci-hub, which is conservation. Furthermore, the graph shows the decline in articles from 2022. Now, this is primarily due to a court case against Sci-hub initiated by the American Chemical Society, Wiley and Elsevier in the Delhi High Court. The downturn of prevalence of articles published after 2021 is surprisingly a conscious decision by Elbakayan, as she aims to actively engage in the hearings to prove that the website is legal in India based on previous cases. Now, an important note is that the metadata from Crossref contains some errors, either by humans or computers, as two of the articles are shown to be published in the year 2049 and 2099, but these have been removed, as you can see above the actual graph. This figure shows the distribution of subjects associated with the DOI metadata. An important note in regard to this histogram is that the metadata is subjected to errors, which is also apparent in the distribution of years downloaded from. Additionally, the subjects in this graph are produced from using a counting function, which assumes that the occurrences of a term in the subject section of the metadata in a DOI is a signifier for the subject of the specific paper. Now, from this method, there is a clear indication that articles from the STEM sciences, and specifically medicine, are downloaded especially often. To further elucidate the subjects downloaded most, we can look to those that the authors themselves have used to describe the article. Now, this histogram shows a first subject included by the authors. It gives a more specified overlook into the mostly medical fields which are most commonly downloaded. In this graph, we can see the journals that are mostly downloaded from. At the very top, number 1 is PLOS 1, or the Public Library of Science 1, which is understandable considering most of the downloads are within the medical field, and I think almost every sixth article published in medicine is from this journal. Otherwise, there are common, very popular medical journals and overall science journals such as Science, PLOS, Nature, and The Lancet, etc. In this graph, we can see the most commonly downloaded publishers, or the publishers most commonly downloaded from. At the top is obviously Elsevier, by quite a lot, more than double the amount of following Springer. We also see Wiley, Informa, Sage, American Chemical Society, and Oxford, which are usually the usual suspects in cases of publisher lists. Now, the question of how users find their way to Sci-hub is arguably one of the more interesting aspects this dataset could begin to answer. Initially, the data collection period was supposed to only run for 10 days, which also explains the title of this presentation. From these first apprehensive steps, a pilot dataset was produced, and in it, the most downloaded article was a conference proceeding from an IEEE conference in 2007 on oceanic engineering. Now, on closer reading, it was found to be connected to a tweet by a paleontologist discussing the prevalence of toads at the bottom of the Loch Ness. Now, the initial tweet, which is pictured here, became viral, garnering several 100,000 likes and retweets and etc. And to further boost interest, the paleontologist shared a link to Sci-hub where the picture along with additional information could be found. Now, sharing the link most likely caused an influx of traffic to Sci-hub for this specific article. Naturally, these are not definitive findings for how all users find Sci-hub. However, the casual sharing of a link that can be definitely linked to how a largely unremarkable and unsighted conference proceeding could top the download statistics for an entire summer of Sci-hub. Thank you.